Hey, my lovers and friends, it's your girl Tiffany Rochelle here, the people's cheerleader, and I am about to volunteer you to do something. I know you're probably wondering, what am I about to volunteer you for? Well, this is what I need for you to do. I need you to like and subscribe to this show and this channel. So, if you will, go ahead and minimize the screen and hit the subscribe button and make sure you turn those notifications on because that's important for you to be able to stay connected with me and the community. So, like this show, subscribe to this channel, and make sure you stay tuning in. I also need for you to make sure that you share this show with somebody. You never know whose life you're going to be impacting by sharing this with someone. So show me that sharing is caring in your life and share this show with someone. So I'm going to stop talking right now so we can get to my amazing VIP that's here with me on tonight. Here we go. Hey, hello, kind of people. There is my lovers and friends on tonight. I am so thankful that you're taking some of your non-refundable time to spend with me and my VIP. She's super dope. She's amazing. And I'm so grateful that I have been graced with her presence. And she be trying to hide from me because she be so busy. But it wasn't going to be so. I didn't care how I was about to get up on her calendar. I was getting on that calendar, huh? Yes, I was being persistent. I really wasn't. She was just really great about what she does. So my guest on tonight, she is a writer. She's a doula. She's an activist. She's a business consultant, and she's an educator. But I cannot put a period right there because I'd be limiting some of the hats that she wears. And God knows that this lady is absolutely phenomenal and amazing. But I will say that I'm going to have to place a comma right there, though, just for time's sake. And she'll show you exactly how amazing she is. So let me bring to your forefront the lady who I'm going to say she digs into more pee than the average guy. So I'm going to bring her to your forefront. Come here, girl.
Hey! Hey, y'all.
You? Please tell me I didn't offend you.
I loved it. I was like, so every time I listen to your episodes, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for Tiffany to do the intro, being like, here comes Bianca.
Yeah. Right here. How are you feeling today? Tell me what you're thankful for.
Oh, I have so much to be thankful for. We had sun. It was really nice today. Everyone's in good health over here. Okay, so I started doing step dance and I had when I moved. And so I had my performance, I don't know what you would call it, on the weekend. And I am grateful that that is done because it was stressing me out. And I left my body. So like I had to watch the video to see what it looked like.
What you think of the video?
It was good. It was good. I was like, oh, okay. Because I have no memory of it. I remember the lights in my eyes and some cheering, and then it was over.
So you really zoned out and you just really shifted. You was like, I'm in the moment. I am here.
Yeah.
It's all or nothing.
Yeah, it was I have like actually no memory of it, which is weird because I spent a lot of time on stage. But I was like really nervous about this. It was out of my comfort zone. I was watching like younger people do it way better than me. And but so I'm glad it's done. I'm really proud of myself. I was like, that was brave. And so I'm really grateful that I've like my nervous system has like come way down because the anticipation of that was it was a slog the last couple of weeks. I mean, I've been preparing since like I started in September, and it's like rough and clunky, but I'm doing it.
Okay. What made you want to do that though? What brought that change that made you say, I need to learn to dance or do this performance?
Well, I moved far away. I moved and so I kind of felt like I had this like blank slate where I could be like, who's this new Bianca? And so this new Bianca does step dance.
Okay, that makes sense. I got it. I got you. Tell me this. What made you want to become a doula? Of all things in the world, why?
Okay, so I had my daughter, I was probably like 10 years younger than I planned because she's
Okay.
like off to college next year.
Okay.
And I know, yay. And I was like so raging mad after my birth. Like
Mm.
what happened to me in the hospital and how hard I had to work just to like I just it was and so I left and I was like this rage, it like turned it on. The switch got flipped. I was pretty like apathetic up until that point. And I was a good girl. I followed the rules. I didn't really like to really like push against you know, teachers, parents. I followed the law, like those kind of things. I was a like a really socialized good girl. And this like rage started in me and it was just like vomiting out. I sprayed on everything, including my baby. I just was so overwhelmed. I had undiagnosed postpartum depression. And my whole life, my plan was to be an obstetrician. So and I realized that the harm that came at the hands of my doctors, that I was like, I cannot be a part of that. And so I loved the role my doula had. Like I was like, oh, you're actually protecting birth. And I stupidly was going to medical school thinking that I was going to be protecting birth. And I realized they're making a mess. They're killing us. They're killing our babies. They're like bad stuff's happening to us on the labor and delivery floors. And so I pivoted. It was a big pivot.
Yeah.
But
So what is the difference
yeah.
between a regular doctor and the doula?
Well, so obstetricians now are surgical specialties, so they love cutting. That's why the C-sections are the most common surgery, followed by hysterectomies. Like they love cutting, because that's what they were trained to do, and it appeals to surgeons. And
Sure.
so doulas don't have to do any of that medical care. Our goal is to like safely get birthing people and their family and their babies from like baby in to baby out, in a really like safe, informed consent, evidence-based way. And I started my practice just knowing that I wanted to be a part of this change. And then the more I was in the space, I realized like my fellow queer folks and racialized folks and people living in big bodies and people who were deemed too young, too old, like our indigenous community here in Canada, like it was bad. And so that's actually when I started focusing not just on the work a doula does, but training doulas and really focusing on reproductive justice. And so
Okay.
that's about 15 years now that we've been like full force being like, how do we keep equity seeking groups making it through alive, because our stats are real bad for queer and racialized folks, like real bad.
Okay. But
So
I'm
I'm
nosy.
trying
Hold
to
on.
solve it in my lifetime.
Yeah, and I believe you probably will because you're pretty persistent. So I think you really are. But I got a question because you made a statement, and as you was talking, don't judge me because the way my mind works is. Whew. So you made well, you classified a group of people. You said big bodies. Is forgive me, and I know we deal with cancel culture, so hopefully this won't
Yeah.
go. Ugh. Nevertheless, but is that like a AKA for calling people fat or obese or something like that, or what is big bodies?
Yeah.
Forgive me for being green.
No, I think that's great. So I use the terms interchangeably. I say the fat community, I say folks living in big bodies, plus size folks, and I use those like so I teach a lot about anti-fat bias and I ask people what they want to be called because I think there can be a reclamation of the word fat. It's just a descriptor. It's the fact that we are so fat phobic that we
Yeah,
associate fat with unhealthy, with lazy,
negative.
with dirty, with stupid. But
Mhm.
that's the patriarchy. The same way they think all these other things are associated with queer folks and with black
Mhm.
folks and with
Uh-huh.
brown folks. And so there's like a reclamation within our movement. Now not everybody likes the word fat
Okay.
because everyone's in a different journey with that word. Like
Uh-huh.
I call myself a dyke, but there's
Okay.
even other lesbian friends I have that are like, oh, how do you say that? And I was like, I love that word,
Right.
I'm taking it back, it's a great word, I'm a dyke. Like lesbian sticks in my throat, it feels too soft, like I love the word. But so I use folks living in big bodies is like pretty neutral. Like it like
Okay.
works for most people. Because plus
Okay.
size sounds like they're plus like they're not. It's just like it's
Mhm.
just your size. Like plus implies you're bigger than what should be.
Well, I
And
guess that's probably what I would want to call myself right now is plus size because I'm not. living in a big body, but I am per my standards.
Thick.
Like it's me personally, but I love the word fat. Like if somebody, I love
Yeah,
food
that's great.
also. So for me, is if I'm saying that, like my favorite word is if somebody's talking about they're getting ready to eat, and I'm like, oh, I'm going because you're talking to my inner fat girl. So like, but for me, I'm not taking it like super bad, but I said that out loud one time, and somebody was so offended, and I'm like, but I wasn't me. I'm first of all talking about myself, okay, and then two, I'm like, I wasn't even talking to you, okay. So cool out. But after that exchange, I was like, okay, so then if I'm in public, I'd say I'm referring to my inner Bertha. Lo and behold, someone overheard
That
me
felt better.
huh,
I see that probably flopping.
to a certain individual that was overhearing it. They were upset and they were offended. But I'm like, I felt like there almost now, I feel like there's nothing that I really can say that's not going to offend somebody. And I don't always want to go tiptoeing around everything
Oh,
and
this
being
is a
like,
nice
oh,
segue. This
yes,
is a good segue. Give it to me, Tiffany. I see you.
pretty good at what I do, right? You weren't supposed to pay attention like that. Nevertheless, that's just what I feel like, though. I feel like I have to tiptoe around everything. I don't have a problem with gay individuals. If you want to be gay, fine. Just don't inflict it on me and feel like you have to be this way too. Try it. I just don't
It's
force
not
me to do.
touchable.
It is. I'm trying, but it is what it is. But I mean, I'm just saying, I just feel like that's where we're at right now. Like there's certain words you can and can't say, or if I do say it, it's comfortable for me or a group of people that I'm around, it's okay. But everybody is so offended by it so much.
Yeah. Well, I love that you started with that because I mean, there's a few things you touched on which I can't wait to talk about with you more. So one is self-censorship. It's a
Sure.
consequence of cancel culture is that we're not saying anything about anything because we're
Right.
so scared. The other is you can see that most of the time we're getting canceled, big or small. So like you might not be invited to that party again because you made the
Mhm.
fat joke, or
Right.
you might be dragged on the internet. So big or
Mhm.
small, both of them are massive losses to the individual because the loss of community is one of the
Right.
biggest punishments. And so we can now see that these thought crimes or like crimes of language,
Mhm.
the consequences aren't matching. And I mean, even when people say racist and homophobic things, I'm like, yeah, they're a-holes. And like,
Mhm.
I would unfollow them or I would not invite them to my party. But
Uh-huh.
the crimes like do not match like a full shaming, ostracization.
Mhm.
And, and I always hope that somebody who's close to them puts them in line. So like maybe your
Right.
friend would take you aside and be like, listen, there's a
Mhm.
misconception that the more we eat, that's what leads to fatness, and that,
Right.
misses the fact that some people are genetically disposed to live in big bodies regardless of what they eat. And so, and that they lovingly explain that to you in private, because then
Mhm.
there's room for movement for you, right? Because shame doesn't move us. Shame makes
It does.
us hate a group. It makes us martyr somebody. Like it causes really, we don't move from shame. If you're like
Don't.
real about doing your work, you could quietly take that in. Like I felt shame and then I've gone and been like, okay, you felt shame, like let's look at it. But like that's with years of me making a deep commitment to
Uh,
understand the world I live in.
right.
Most
But
people don't have
that's
time for
something
that.
you were committed to and you realized that you
Committed.
did some evaluation and you were like, hey, wait a minute. Hold on.
Yeah.
That took
But
some time for you to realize that.
oh, totally. I used to hate being corrected. I would have, oh my God, Tiffany, the lengths I would have gone to, even when I
Mhm.
knew I was wrong, to like
Okay.
not admit I was wrong. I like suffered in my life because I was just always, like,
Mhm.
always being like, no, it was that color. Like, I don't even know, like, pick big and small. And now I'm like, do you know what? I'm probably wrong. And to see, I had to have a lobotomy. I don't know where the change came, but like, I would have like cut my nose off to spite my face over and over and over again.
Mhm.
And the work I do, I guess I was like, you don't have, your ego doesn't have space to do this. Like people are dying and you've got stuff to do. So I think that probably helped. but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
cancel culture is a really complicated thing because you can whip up any group because we
Mhm.
lead with our trauma. We're traumatized. Like
Mhm.
us, the people who are the most harmed by cancel culture are no surprise women, and then we can just like find the intersections of like mothers, queer folks, racialized folks, fat folks, like we're already the most harmed by society, and
Right.
cancel culture just like put it on steroids. Like we're quadruple harmed. And it's, the
Right.
idea of cancel culture was to like take down politicians. It was to take
Mhm.
down major corporations, not like
Uh-huh.
your local
Everything is what's happening now, though. Everything is
yeah,
a
but it's
product
not
of
taking
this.
them down.
Yeah. You're
No.
taking everything, and I think that's what's making us live in a state of fear, though. So how are
Yeah,
we going
it
to get
is.
outside of our fear box? And we're always quick to tell somebody, "Oh, you can't live in fear, and you gotta try more." But it's almost in the process of I'm kind of fearful if I try and I start being myself. Oh my gosh, now I'm getting ready to be ostracized from everybody because hey, you told me to be myself. You told me to start opening up. You told me to, and I started doing what you're saying. Now you're trying to put me in a box because I'm not fitting in according to what your plan or
Yeah.
your world looks like. That sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. And we're demanding perfection from one another because like
Mhm.
I don't know the term you like. You might be like being called black, you might like African
I
American,
do.
you might like
Yeah.
racialized, you might like BIPOC, you might like POC, WOC, like but you might also hate some of those words.
That
And so
sounds like
I
I need a vaccine. No, it's just black or
have
African American. Everything else that you
cool.
said is what? Wait,
Yeah.
pause. I'm so serious. Pause. Here comes me being green again. What? What
Well,
were the acronyms that you were using?
so BIPOC is Black Indigenous Person of Color, and then there's
Yeah.
just POC, which is Person of Color, and then WOC, which is Woman of Color, and then there's Black racialized, like these, but you might hate some of those terms, and I have to just be like, what would you like me to reference? The same way I don't love lesbian, but if you were
Right.
like, how does dyke roll? I'd be like, that's kind of for other queers to call me, and then you could be
Okay.
like, how do you like queer? And we have to do
Yeah.
that as a one-off thing. But the problem is we all have these like really clear, like I like this, I don't like this. And
Yeah.
so there's no, because I can put up a post for, I don't know, pick anything, and I could
Yeah.
say something like, we need to protect fat bodies, and I guarantee I'll get as many people saying like, yeah, thank you, that's empowering, as I do
Uh-huh.
people being like, who are you? Or I could say BIPOC and people are like, I'm tired of you lumping everybody in, call us
Right.
black, and then someone else is like, but I feel really empowered being put with other people of
Uh-huh.
color. And so this is like they're just like sparks everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And it only works when we're on a one-on-one, because what's happening
Yeah.
is everybody on the left, I mean the right, they've got it on lock. They're like, you all are
Uh-huh.
terrible people, and
Uh-huh.
white
Uh-huh.
is right. And they've got it like they just have the same message across the board. But the
But
left,
I
that's where
say
like
Brown ain't
all of
gonna let you down. Okay. Brown will not let you
I'm with
down.
you. I'm with you. White is bad news bears. And so, but like now we've got everybody who's not liked by the right together in
Yeah.
a big
Who's
pit
first?
with our hearts
Uh-huh.
broken. And we're
Mhm.
and we're expecting perfection from one another because we're so harmed by the right. And so
Mhm.
now we're trying to figure it out as these like traumatized bodies. So cancel culture has just like, oh my God, it's taken off. And so how I came into falling in love with this work and being
Yeah.
so committed to being anti-cancel culture was when I got canceled.
Okay.
And I realized really quickly, my organization made it through 2020 being like really solid and an organization that was respected by all the various racialized groups working in reproductive health and justice, which was
Mhm.
like, I was really pleased about it because
Right.
everybody was just being like, show the receipts, like, what are you doing for anti-racist work? And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, we've been doing work for a long time. So this is really great. And the majority
Mhm.
of my team are people of color. So and my business partner at the time was indigenous, and like we like made it through. I was like, that's
Okay.
really great. And so
Okay.
early 2021, a video went up on Instagram of somebody who said they worked for me over 2020 and that I didn't pay them. They never
Oh
worked for me.
wow.
I like they had nothing to do with my company.
Right.
And so at first I saw it and I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. I don't even know this person. Like, why are you lying? And I literally went like had a shower because a bunch of people sent
Right.
it to me. I was like,
Uh-huh.
I don't I'm going to eat dinner and I'm having a shower. And by the time I
Right.
got out of the shower, it had already like gone mini viral within the birth world, like globally. And I was like,
Yeah.
what? Oh, that was like 30 minutes. Like, what is happening?
Right.
And so there was nothing I could do because right away it was like, who cares? Give reparations, apologize. If they say they work for you, believe them.
Right.
And I was like, okay, but they didn't. And like, the reparations aren't supposed to be on an individual level. And like, this is
Okay.
really complicated. And so
Uh-huh.
I got quiet and I asked my team, again, who was predominantly from the Black community,
Uh-huh.
because this person was Black. And I was like, what do you guys want to do? And they were like, he didn't work for us. So
Oh,
no, we don't want to do anything. We'll
right,
just
right, right,
say
right.
he didn't work for us. Like,
Mhm.
tell the truth. And so I was like, okay, we do everything as a non-hierarchical organization. It's everybody gets the same vote, everybody has the same voice. So I was like, okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
And so a bunch of people went to their like various like Black communities and they were like,
Mhm.
okay, so here's the tea.
Okay.
And unfortunately white people who make a mess of everything, they started with the calling my Black team like race traitors and like being whitewashed and like really terrible things. And so very quickly I saw the anatomy unfold, the anatomy of cancel culture, because
Okay.
it's like silence is violence, show your receipts, like all these
Mhm.
like adages, and they're
Mhm.
all opposing. Like none of them make sense to be held at the same time. Like silence is violence and like just be quiet and listen and like all these
Yeah.
things. And I was like, you can't do all of those things at the same time. And so I started reaching out to other people who were exploring cancel culture because everybody had this like precarity with mental health since it was in 2021.
Mhm.
And so there was so much cancel culture. Like everybody was video phoning, like video, you know what I
Mhm.
mean, recording
Taking
everybody on
video.
their cell
Mhm.
phones. Like
Mhm.
everybody was like just like watching everybody so carefully. And some of it I was like, that was in service. Like, let's
Mhm.
start talking about racism in an upfront way. Let's start naming what is racism stuff before they
Mhm.
were like, but that's just jokes. And I was like, it's
Right.
racism. So
Okay.
like that part of it I was really, really excited about. But then I was like, everybody's filming each other and posting. And these
Uh-huh.
things led to really serious consequences
Yeah.
because people wanted to spring to action. So people lost their jobs, people got
Mhm.
deported, people lost their children, lost their pets, lost their livelihood, lost their lives.
Okay.
So I was like, whoa, this is spreading like wildfire. Like people have to be doing this work around it.
Mhm.
And there's some really interesting work. One of the founders of Black Lives Matter, she started talking about how much this was just akin to the industrial prison complex,
Okay.
because we call it like cancel culture or accountability culture, but really it's carceral culture because it's
Okay.
just like another prison of you lose everything and everybody has to like you lose everything like your
Okay.
purpose.
Mhm.
And because again the idea of being ostracized is the biggest fear of humans. That's why
Uh-huh.
before
Mhm.
the history of the worst punishment was dragging you through the square while everybody like booed and threw stuff at you
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
like didn't talk to you anymore. Like that's the ultimate punishment. And this is happening over and over and over again.
Right.
And so I
Right.
really liked, so I was like, oh, this is great. This concept of carceral culture, because as an abolitionist, like our
Mhm.
prison system is terrible and most of the crimes don't match the consequences, like all of these things. And
Mhm.
so I started then figuring out like, why is this so popular? And so there's a
Mhm.
couple things that
Mhm.
happen. One is for the individual, it feels really good because you feel like you got justice. So we get this
Okay.
dopamine hit.
Okay.
And it's like, oh, this is awesome. And we also love watching people suffer.
Sure.
Like watching other people, like, I mean, I laugh when people fall on like when I watch videos and stuff. And so this is this concept of like pleasure from other people's suffering, and we all have it to some degree. So we have that
Mhm.
happening. And the worst part though is it's being capitalized. So tech had over three, or I don't know the number, but in the trillions of
Okay.
dollars of profit made
Okay.
from cancel culture, because
Wow.
now the algorithms, so there's this book called The Algorithms of Oppression. I love her, Dr. Safia Noble. She's like
Okay.
amazing. And so she wanted to start looking at what's happening for women and racialized women
Okay.
specifically. And so the algorithms are actually scanning our posts. And if you say the
Mhm.
word like disgusting, hate,
Mhm.
horrible, like any of those like words,
Mhm. Mhm.
like those like, you know, those
There's
fighting,
jarring
canceling
words.
words.
Yep.
Yeah, those like
Mhm.
those big ones. The algorithm actually scans them and they continue to bump it up. So then we see
Yeah.
it more. So then we find
Mhm.
out that somebody asked somebody in their staff meeting to cover up when they were breastfeeding on camera. And then they're
Right,
like,
right.
"Can you believe that's how we feed our babies?" Of which I agree. But then
Uh-huh.
but then they're like, "That's disgusting. Do you know?" And then it goes up and you go up. And then you're like, "How does this have 18,000 comments on
Right,
somebody's
right.
tweet that was like,
Mhm.
I don't see the problem with asking somebody to turn their camera off while they're breastfeeding in our Zoom meeting."
Right.
And then it's because the social media is selling attention because we're all
Mhm.
on it for free when you're just like scrolling, looking at succulent plants or
Uh-huh.
barbecue sauce or whatever we're looking at. Um, but between
Now
every
I'm
one of
hungry.
those, I know, right? But between every one of those cooking recipes or those,
Uh-huh.
how do you grow your own succulents, there's an
Yeah,
ad. And so they
yeah,
want you to stay
yeah.
on as long as possible. And
Mhm.
the more you have, like the more times you're hitting forward, comment, can
Mhm.
you believe this person? They sell
Yeah.
more ad space because we're all staring at it for longer. Like the other day, I
Mhm.
found myself reading a thread and I was like, oh my God, Bianca, why are you watching this like car crash happen?
Uh-huh.
Because these are all terrible things and like they got you because it's
Uh-huh.
they're
It
they're
is.
selling.
But it's
They
amazing
got
certain
me.
words that will, because it like listens to everything that we're saying. We're looking at little things that we're scrolling at. And like you said, there'll be a little, because now even if you're looking at reels, you'll scroll on there, you're just scrolling in the stop. You gotta watch the ad. And it's like, or you gotta push in 4 seconds. Now you can skip the ad. And it's like, hey,
Yeah,
like stop forcing this in my face. Like I really don't
yeah.
appreciate it. There's certain words and as you're watching it, and then once they in 4 seconds you can fast forward it, then like, oh, it was so intriguing. Now I have to stay here. Now I want to
I
learn
know they
more
get
about this.
you.
Yeah, and they got you. Now you want to go over to their site and try. Now you done spent money that you shouldn't have been spending, or whatever.
That's
So you can't. It's amazing how
exactly.
certain stuff just kind of like comes up. But does it ever feel overwhelming for you, or it just feels like, man, this is a bit much? Like you're coming to me and you're like, hey, how do you want to identify? I want to identify as a female, I'm black, and you better call me, big bone, because I don't want you to call me fat. I want you to call me that, because we're all thick down here in the South. Like, does that ever feel overwhelming? Like you have to remember everybody, and I got to remember your pronouns and your, and,
Yeah, it
and I
does. It's
don't.
tiring. Do you know what's funny though? For anybody that's just listening, if you haven't gleaned, I'm white. If you're not watching, if you're, but I
Which
feel
I'm glad you did say that though, because it definitely is on like Google podcasting and Apple. So that's a good thing you
yeah.
did that. Toots. Okay.
So I'm white, if you didn't get that. Um, and I teach a lot about anti-racist, anti-oppression work. Like that's and anything I am teaching about, even if it's about business, if it's about like testing and pregnancy, doesn't matter what I'm teaching about. I always teach it from a perspective of anti-racist, anti-oppression. When I'm teaching about anti-racist work, I am not as worried about issues like about saying the wrong thing. And but yet when I'm speaking to the queer community, I do feel like that. I feel overwhelmed. Like I teach a lot about like gay reproduction and just all the complications around for queer folks having babies, the legal, the medical, the like homophobia in the system. Um
Mhm.
there I'm always like ready to get jumped on in a way more aggressive way than when I'm talking about racial issues, which is interesting. Like that, I get a little bit of anxiety when I'm like, okay, this whole week I'll be talking about laws of queer reproduction or identity
Yeah.
politics and I do feel a little bit anxious. I also feel anxious when I talk about indigenous issues here in Canada because there have been no reparations. There's like
Okay.
the concept of how indigenous folks are enslaved by settlers, of which I'm one. Um,
Okay.
it's still in action. Like there's not it's still like happening right now.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so that also I feel really like the problem is still very much current as if, we were taking
Mhm.
it back to folks being enslaved.
Yeah.
So I mean, I do and I don't. Like once you're canceled, you're kind of like not really cancelable again. Like I had
Okay.
my life blow up. I lost my friends. I lost all my money. I lost my mental health. I lost my physical health. I lost my
Mhm.
partner. I lost everything and I've
Okay.
rebuilt after that.
Okay.
Because when you get canceled, everybody around you has to like step back because they're scared of being swept up in the yuck.
Mhm.
And especially when you're canceled on like a really big level. And so I just mostly listen and then so I don't feel and I'm okay to be corrected. So if
Okay.
I said something like the BIPOC community and you're like, I actually don't like that, I'd be like, okay, cool. What would you like? And so I find
Okay.
that easier. But as long as we're so deeply entrenched in identity politics, and so we are really fighting about what to say, which
Yeah.
feels irritating because I'm like, they don't care. They're still not paying us the same
Uh-huh.
amount. There's still no consequence for sexual assault. We still have no
Uh-huh.
control over reproductive bodies. So I feel like it's a bit of a distraction. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll get some strongly worded letters depending on who your listeners are for saying that.
And
But
get over it.
like we have stuff to do and it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we shouldn't respect at an individual level. So like when
Mhm.
Tiffany is talking to Bianca, Bianca needs
Mhm.
to respect what Tiffany's saying and
Sure.
Tiffany needs to respect what Bianca's saying. So like
Mhm.
I lost my dad to suicide about
Uh-huh.
12 years ago. And so there's
Wow.
some things in my intimate circles that I don't love some language, like the
Yeah.
FML acronym, don't love
Mhm.
it.
Okay.
I don't use the language committed suicide. It's a cause of death. So we can honor
Okay.
mental health. So I say death by suicide. But like you
Okay.
didn't know that. So if you said I know somebody that committed suicide, I wasn't going to be
Right.
like, actually, you've offended me. But later,
Right.
if we were like hanging out, I'd be like, do you know
Mhm.
what? If you ever bring it up again, I'd really love if you use the language death by suicide because it's my commitment to like stop having it be so stigmatized because
Uh-huh.
everybody is impacted by suicide.
Right.
And I
Right.
think we should talk about it more so that it's not a secret because the secret is what causes more suicide.
How do
Um,
you feel if somebody doesn't want to honor that? So if you're
then they're not my
saying, "Hey,
people.
okay, can you
Yeah.
we have to be in a setting right now." So because we
Yeah.
have to be in a setting, how uncomfortable is it going to make you that I don't want to honor that request? No, it's called suicide. That's what they try to commit. They try to commit it. Like if
Yeah.
I'm determined that I'm going to say that, but we have to stay in the same space right now. How does that make you feel? Or are you going to be like, "Well, F you, no mother," you're how do you operate on that?
If I'm well rested and fed and watered, I respond better. So like I know there's times like the other day I did something kind of shitty in the airport because I was like hungry and I was tired and I was trying to get my daughter on her flight. And she was like, Mom, that's not really something you would do. And I was like, okay, thanks for calling me out on that. That's true. I'm hungry and I'm tired and that was unkind. But
Mhm,
if you right now in this setting, if you were like, do you know what? No, I'm gonna say committed suicide, then
mhm,
I would be curious to
mhm,
be like, tell me why you feel really committed to that word because you
mhm.
might also have something have happened to you to be like,
Right, right.
do you know what, my mom did that and I hate her for that and she
Uh-huh.
she committed that and I'd be like, okay,
Mhm.
great, I don't hate my dad for it, I have deep
Right.
compassion and
Mhm,
my goal is over here. And so
mhm.
it's actually really interesting if you ask people why they're really committed to, like, I like and respect you enough to do it.
Yeah,
If it was somebody else, like
yeah.
a white man, I'd probably be like, "Do you know what? I'm gonna go," and I would have just ended the podcast. But like, but
I'm
for
so
you,
I got
I want to know why you're so committed to being oppositional to me because it
okay.
actually solidifies my own, like, like it helps me learn about what the opposition is out in the world. And so
Mhm.
that when I start talking about mental health, if you've told me, so if I ask you why do you not like the term that feels important to me, and if
Uh-huh.
you give me these explanations, I actually find every time I ask that question when it's like somebody that I care to ask, um,
Mhm,
I learned so much more. And like,
mhm.
if it's something that I feel really like locked in, so there's certain things that I feel unmovable on, like
Okay.
more so than others. And when
Uh-huh.
I ask questions, I actually find I move on it, or I at
Yeah.
least understand the other people's experience.
Mhm.
And so I
And
find that it's always a learning curve because
mhm.
like there's so much complexity happening with all the people around us. Like we're each
Uh-huh.
one of us are these like massive ecosystems
Uh-huh.
that are informed by our religion, our parents, the cities we grew up in, how much
Mhm.
income we had at different stages of our life, our nutrition. Like we have
Mhm.
these our friends, our people that we've lost, like the harm
Yeah.
that's come to us, wins we've had.
Mhm.
These are happening with every single person, and so I think we can learn a lot from one another when we're
Sure.
feeling generous to do so. Now,
Mhm.
when somebody's saying some like ratty shit about
Mhm.
something that feels really important to me, they're not
Uh-huh.
the people that I'm like, tell me about that. Like when people say racist
You're
things to
like
my kid,
mhm.
I'm not like,
Mhm.
oh, let's get curious about why they're
Right.
being racist. I'm like, no,
Mhm.
you're saying some ratty stuff, and you
Yeah.
can't say that to my black kid, and like get
Mhm.
away from us.
Makes
Like,
sense. I mean,
or
because there's
you know,
levels to that. It's definitely levels.
yeah,
Like it's not something that I'm just going. I'm picking a fight with everybody because you're absolutely right with that communication thing. That breaks down a whole lot. Because for me, I want to know why are you so stuck on saying certain things, and for me, even with so fun fact, we just use that as a scenario, but it's a real life thing because I just learned something
uh,
about you with your dad.
uh,
And fun fact is that something that actually happened to me that I was at one point in time suicidal. So, but I am not
yeah,
committed to those words, like not by far.
yeah.
But as you're saying that, I'm like, oh, I could see that as that being a cause of death because technically, hey, this is what how
It's a
you
cause of
arrived
death.
there, right?
Yeah,
Then I'm like, oh, but this is something that that person was committed to, and this is what they did. But more so for me, that's just the language that I heard in growing up, and so I'm
mhm.
just committed to using it. It's not that I feel like I can't use it. It's just what I heard growing up. So it's just
Yeah, me
that's
too.
what
Me
it is.
too.
So it
It
just
was
takes it takes an understanding or someone sharing something with you, and you're like, oh, now you may or may not agree with it, but you at least have a better understanding, and you may become more sympathetic to another individual.
yeah,
Or saying this kind of how for me, my moment was using two words, fat and Bertha. I I'm talking to people, but people overheard, and unfortunately, they were offended by that. I'm not intentionally trying to offend you, but offense happened in the process of it. So I kind of,
yeah.
but as I didn't really want to debate them, like why this. I don't really want. I was like you. I don't really want to debate that. It's just, I can either fight it or just be like, you know what, whatever. So
Yeah.
like it's just a thing, but it is something that I like hearing. Is why do you choose to do this? Why is it so important for me to? And if you're a special individual, like you said, I like you. We're having conversation. So I would be more committed to saying, like, hey, whatever is going to be a little more pleasing to your palate because I'm not trying to offend you. But if this is one of them conversations, I don't really care about you. Hey, I asked you just to respect my space. You've asked me to respect yours. So we're going to respect spaces,
Yeah.
however, comma, if it can't be done.
Yeah. And then you move on. Like that's the
Mhm,
other thing as a people. We have to
mhm.
get more comfortable with like generously moving on. Not like
Yeah,
flipping the bird, not silent treatment, not storming out, but just like
yeah,
moving on and truly like with your heart, not where you like stop talking to them but you check their Facebook, like where
right.
you cut talk, like where you're like you go over there and I'm going to
Uh-huh.
go over here and you actually like sever from them. And
Mhm.
this was it saved my life. Like it saved my
Yeah.
life, this concept where you don't
Uh-huh.
have to keep your friends along just because you went through some stuff before. Like
Mhm.
if they're not in alignment, if they don't make your heart sing, if they're like a lot of drama, if they're not
Yeah.
understanding maybe this new stage of your life, or like because as you're doing this work, magic happens. Like you
Yeah.
shift. I was so judgmental. I was
Yeah.
so rigid. I was
Uh-huh.
like, and I suffered. And it honestly took my dad's death that I was like, I don't want to suffer in silence. I don't want to be right all the time. I don't like it was shocking when my dad died. Like
Yeah.
most like I this is how I got so involved in the survivor community was because I had this idea of like it's for rock stars and those people.
Okay.
And I was like my dad was like it didn't make sense to me. Like I
Uh-huh.
was like, you were
Uh-huh.
super hands-on, you had a
Uh-huh.
good job, you were an athlete, you had a beautiful house, you loved my mom, you were like
Yeah.
you were just like oozed love and community. And it rocked me. And I threw myself into that recovery. Like I joined support groups, I did marches, I
Good.
fundraised, like I was like I listened because
Mhm.
I always fondled suicide. It was such a comfort. And now I
Mhm.
got to the point where I'm like, if I'm feeling low,
Mhm.
and my brain goes to that, I can now see like, oh, this is a comfort. You're feeling overwhelmed
Yeah.
because it's really empowering the concept that we can decide when we don't want to be alive anymore. It's
Yeah.
a really powerful thing. And we are
Uh-huh.
like, we're even scared to talk about those things.
Yeah.
Now like planning and like those kind of things, that's different. But suicidal
Mhm.
ideation is healthy. It's not, it's fine.
Okay.
Now if there's any psychiatrists out there that want to challenge me, there's
Or
obviously like if you're not sure,
the
we go
possibility.
talk to a therapist, like all of
Mhm.
those things. But
Mhm.
like and so that's where I got particular about language. I didn't have that because I had some friends die by suicide, but it didn't like connect to me the same way as losing my dad was like my person. And
Uh-huh.
so
It's
and
family. You've been around all your life.
I know, and he was just good. He got me, and like we were very, very, very close, and it
Mhm.
blew me away. And and so it wasn't until I was like, okay, because I wanted to keep it a secret at first. I was really ashamed. I thought it like didn't speak to the legacy he was leaving, and
Okay.
so I needed to make that right to be like, why is the act of somebody's death so profound, and like how can it undo this incredible life he lived, and it's
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
defined by this 5-minute decision. And so I I got intentional about that. And so the language to me felt intentional. So bringing it back to if somebody didn't want to honor that and they
Mhm.
didn't have a reason except for like, I just think it's dumb, or like I
Mhm.
like saying committed suicide, or I like suicide jokes. I also like,
Right.
I don't love suicide jokes. Um,
Right.
I would not be in those spaces. I
Yeah.
also am aware that it's not on your radar until it's on your radar, because it wasn't on mine until
Mhm.
2012. And
Mhm.
so I now notice it everywhere. I notice all the jokes in TV shows. I haven't watched a TV show or a movie that hasn't either shown a suicide or made a reference to suicide.
Wow.
And if you said that to most people, you'd be like, "No, I don't think so." But like
Mhm.
go get a little tally and watch anything, whether it's a
Mhm.
joke show or something serious or like The Walking Dead. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter. They're like so
Seems like
fast,
there is a reference. Mhm.
but I didn't notice it before because it
Mhm.
wasn't. And so
It
when
wasn't a
people
part of you.
it wasn't a part of me, and so I
Mhm.
also give people a lot of grace
Yeah.
that I don't expect everyone to be so vigilant about the conversation with suicide, because why would you, unless you've been personally impacted, or, it's been like something that's now part of your makeup. And so
Mhm.
I think that we can be more generous, but it also is a big ask because we're traumatized and we're hurt and the
Sure.
world is pretty terrible to us. But I
Yeah.
think there's like places, like I have some friends who are deeply, deeply involved in their organized religion.
Okay.
And they have a belief that I'm going to hell. And
Okay.
so I sat and I was like, tell me about that. Like,
Uh-huh.
tell me why this is a concern for you. And they're like, well, I love
Mhm.
you. And because you're gay, you're
Yeah.
going to go to hell. And I was
Okay.
like, that must be really scary for you. That must
Mhm.
make you really sad. Thank you for
Uh-huh.
loving me that much.
Yeah.
And I truly meant it. And
Uh-huh.
I was like, you can't say homophobic things. You can't
Right.
imply that this is something that's I'm
Mhm.
choosing. You can't,
Uh-huh.
like, these are the ground rules. And I
Mhm.
firmly believe that that is
Mhm.
something that you're worried about because of
Yeah.
the faith that you practice. And I'm
Mhm.
deeply spiritual. And I think
Mhm.
God and I are like real good. Like I think he loves the
Y'all are
heck out of
homies.
me. Yeah, we're like
Right.
this. And
Mhm.
so like I don't believe that he would do, or I actually don't even think it's a he. I think
Okay.
like very,
Mhm.
very, very strong, important thing in my life. Like
Mhm.
I don't think there's a consequence for
Mhm.
me for who I love. And I know
Okay.
that there are lots of people who don't agree with
Mhm.
me.
Uh-huh.
But if they're in my life in an intimate, loving way, like being a close friend,
Wow.
or
Yeah.
being somebody I would text message or come to my
Mhm.
home,
Mhm.
we have to set some ground rules. Like
Sure.
some of this isn't gonna work. And some of my
Yeah.
friends, it gets to a place where I'm like, "Do you know what? You're not loving me for me." And I think that's a
Mhm.
tenet of like all religion, is to like
Yeah.
love really big. It's about love.
Absolutely.
It's about
That it
being good
definitely makes
citizens.
I'm all for
And
love.
so
I love it so much it
yeah,
tatted it on me.
I and I don't know. So I think that there's places that you can find a negotiation that you can
Yeah.
land somewhere if there's going to be some things that you just don't touch. Like my partner
Yeah.
and I have some things that I'm like we're never
Yeah.
going to agree on this one. Well, mostly just mostly she's stubborn.
Okay. Okay.
But, um, and so we're like, we just don't touch it and we act responsibly around that issue. We're
Makes sense.
responsible.
That makes sense. I mean, because each relationship is to its own. And so like that's a beautiful thing. Hey, this is just untouchable. It's just and I'm sure you guys have probably ventured into certain conversations about that. So then we just know we don't touch it. Okay.
Yeah, it's
You're
just
gonna
we just don't touch it.
yeah. So you like your stance on it. I like my stance on it. But I like and love you as an individual. So is it really worth sacrificing the relationship because of something we don't agree on? So let's not touch it.
Yeah.
Totally makes
Yeah.
sense.
And we
Tell me
might
this.
shift. She's still pretty young. So like I'm at a place where I'm like, I'm not offended by by what you think about this. But
Oh,
it has
well,
to it has
that's
to be the cycle.
maturity. That's
Yeah.
maturity. I absolutely
Yeah.
love it. Tell me this. What is the final word you would want to leave with somebody? What do
Oh,
you want? When we think about you and the
oh
the,
about
the
me.
closing of the show, what when somebody thinks about your name, what would you want them to
Oh,
think about
I really I mean, I know I said the love thing, but I'm so committed to bringing humanity and dignity back. Like I do it everywhere I do, like everything I do, everywhere I teach, everyone I talk to. And it's something that we've forgotten. We've forgotten the like humanness of it. We spend so much time online. We
you?
spend so little time in person and listening. And I think
Mhm.
it's really important that we're gentler to each other and I'm really proud of that being such an important pillar to how I live my life personally, professionally, intimately. And I hope if nothing else everyone just like takes a pause and starts talking to and listening to one another. I think we could get some great stuff done.
Oh, I like that's one thing I definitely love to do. I love listening to individuals. So
Well,
it's a beautiful thing
you're
because a
good
lot of
at
us
it.
really want to be we love to be heard. So I want to talk to
Yeah.
you and I want you to hear how I'm feeling. And depending on it, I can very much grow by
Yeah.
you allowing me just to get that off my chest. And I just needed to get that off. And now that you listen to me and now I can hear whatever whoever was saying to me because I was weighted down. I had so much on me that my ears was just like everything sounds like that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you saying that. That is beautiful. Listening matters. God darn it. I love it. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming to the show. You are amazing. I
Oh, thank you so
learned a
much for
lot.
having me.
Absolutely, and especially I learned how to put some acronyms together. Now I knew the names of them, but I never knew to follow. I never knew
There's
it. Like
they're
I knew about the
flooding out.
women of shit.
You
You
won't be able
learned
to
me.
keep up with them.
I'm not. So that's why I am not that one that's super uber easily offended. Tell me how you feel, and you say whatever it is. We may agree. It may just be unspoken, like you said,
Yeah.
but at least we know these are they, and this is how we go. I appreciate you. This is not going to be the last time we talk on here.
Oh,
Telling
hot
you
damn.
also, you trying
Tiffany,
to tell
thank
me you
you
don't want to
so
talk to me
much.
again? Is that what
No,
you're trying to
I
tell me?
do. Of course I do. I was just really excited to be one of the few white people on your podcast.
Yo, you gotta chill out.
I was like,
Look,
"Okay."
you're making me feel like that. You know how you say, well, oh, I have black friends, or you be like, I can go talk to them. So now I feel like that. Well, I got some white people on my show. I
I
do have
know
a
some white people. Next time you're at like a store, be like, I know a white person. My cousin, do you know that? You know how people do that? I know a gay person. I know a black person.
like
You're like, oh,
right.
good. Oh,
Hey,
wow.
you're helping me check off boxes. Thank you.
I know a white person who's gay.
Right. And she's a teacher, and she is gonna fight you on it if you don't
Yeah.
call her by certain things. I don't play with you. Let me quit picking at you. I appreciate you, sis. I love you. I really appreciate you. Y'all join me next week when I have another VIP. They ain't gonna be as cool as she. However, comma, we're gonna have another one for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Grace and peace, y'all.
Hey y'all, it's Tiffany Rochelle here, and I have a few offers just for you. The first one is my book, and it's called I Choose Me. Now, I have had to fight in some type of way or another, but the best fight that I fought is the battle of me. The old me versus the emerging me. Now, the old me always threw some good punches, but the emerging me knew how to stick and move because I learned the art of endurance. Try to hold hate with love, and you tell me who is strong. The second offer is a workbook I have called Gold Digger. Now, there are about 47 activities that we will go through so that you will be able to crush some of your goals for your life. You purchasing this book is one of the first of many steps to bettering your life. Lastly, I have a course on forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't just a nice thing to do. It can also be a powerful tool to bring marvelous change in your life. In this course, you'll learn how to effectively use the skills of forgiveness to help you lead a more peaceful and satisfying life. So, today, unleash the power of forgiveness to create a more meaningful life. Next, I want you to learn that it is okay for you to choose you. And lastly, develop a mindset to see and crush some of your goals. Looking so forward to growing with you. I'm excited for you and your growth. Grace and peace.